Tomas, why did we pick this show? Greg, why did we pick this show? Why did we pick this show?
2 reasons: Ultimate Warrior and Disco Inferno.
Yes. It's the Halloween season, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you once again, Greg Morgan of Good Mic Work Commentaries, for joining us here. We have reviewed a couple of good shows here, but now we're going to review a big pile of shit that is WCW Halloween Havoc. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm awesome. Hope you guys are doing great. Thanks for having me on. This one's going to be fun.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. And I already see we have some people in the chat. We don't usually do this live. I see Luke is in the chat over here already. That is awesome. And anybody watching this replay, happy Halloween, by the way. Happy spooky season. I hope everybody is dressing up as their favorite wrestler. I hope everybody is pulling out their Fiend cosplays and tribute this year. But in any regard, what's up, Martin, in the chat right there? I love it. I love it. But yeah, this was right around the peak of the Monday Night Wars, man. Halloween Havoc 1998 from the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. 25 years ago this year. It's one of the more infamous shows in WCW's history. And not for the wrong reasons, but not for the right reasons either.
No,
it's like this was a well-hyped show. That's not the problem here. The problem is the planning around it. Yeah. They just felt like they had to bulk up this card, Greg, and it could have very well been a nice, even flow, no pun intended, for Raven. 7 matches, in and you're out. But they just put in a bunch of Thunder matches. They put in a bunch of Thunder matches. Yeah. That's what they did.
On paper, this card is good. On paper. But you watch it in execution, and I'm going to be honest, guys, I fell asleep like 2 or 3 times during this show, and the rest of the time, I was just annoyed. This show right here is the definition of WCW in the late 90s. This show right here, I feel like it's the whole reason why they were losing. I mean, you could also, Russo was out the door, he comes back, but the booking was just so like, they were in panic mode. They were like, we're going to throw everything out the wall. WWF is whooping our asses in the ratings. And we're going to try absolutely everything to get our audience back, but it wasn't working. It was like trying to just rebuild this house of cards when it's a lost cause at this point. But WCW still had a lot of big stars on the show. They still had a lot of big stars under contract. It's just the booking was so bad. Yeah, so bad.
Well, they were hanging on in 98. I mean, they still had some life left. They had even won in the ratings, I think, the month prior with the Horsemen, reuniting on Nitro and stuff. But and then the big thing they had was Goldberg. That was the one thing that they had that was competitive with WWE. They had a star that was to the level of a Rock or Austin popularity, and that's who they should be featuring. And his match was cut off on the show, and that's what makes it so funny, is because there was. I want to know what they were doing during the show at Guerrilla, because there were signs an hour into the show that they were going to be low on time. When you look at the card, so there's nobody sitting there like, hey, boss, we're like 35 minutes over here. Do you want to do anything about it? Like, they're just all just going with it and just saying, yeah, 12 matches is no problem for this era of 2-hour and 45-minute pay-per-views. They thought they were going to get all that in. And
should we cut Alex Wright versus Finlay? No, we don't need to cut
that. Gotta have that one. Fans pay to see that.
Yeah.
My money is paid to see Lodi.
Yeah, whoever the fuck he is.
Fine guy Lodi.
Yeah, I hated this show. And you know what? And also, this show is kind of headlined by the rematch that really nobody asked for. And we're talking about Hulk Hogan versus the Warrior. You heard me right. Not the Ultimate Warrior, the Warrior. Jim Hellwig.
What's so ultimate about the Warrior?
Nothing, because he's not even ultimate anymore. Jim Hellwig had signed with WCW a few months prior, but here was the great kicker. He did not want WWE to own the rights to his name so badly that he legally changed his name to Warrior. So WWE could not get their hands on the trademark. And that is, if that doesn't describe Jim Hellwig in a nutshell, I don't know what will, because that is absolutely bonkers just to think about. He legally changed his name to Warrior. So now that the Warrior is in WCW, we have the rematch that, on paper, again, a rematch, 8 or 9 years in the making is fantastic. But in execution, Who was asking for a rematch between Hogan and Warrior when The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Undertaker, Kane, D-Generation X are they're raising hell in WWE and changing the business before our very eyes? I'm sorry, no one's asking for Warrior and Hogan. And that's the number one thing I want to know from you, Greg. What were your feelings? What were your thoughts when you saw that Hogan and Warrior were going to have the rematch nobody asked for?
Yeah, I think it was just that. It was just like nobody asked for it. WCW was getting their butts kicked, so they brought in Warrior as, you know, what they thought would be a shot in the arm. And I would be, as a fan, I would be open to Warrior and Hogan if the story was like, hey, let's give the fans this match again.
Oh, God.
But instead, it wasn't motivated by, hey, let's give this to the fans. They probably like to see this rematch that never happened. It was more like, let me get my win back. And that was all it really was. And that came out in the match. It was just bad. Everything was bad. And I think it was more, you know, just the political stuff backstage. Hogan wanted to get that victory back, you know, from Warrior. And he was, I mean, I think at the time of WWE could have brought Warrior back. They would have. So he was still a name, but there wasn't, at that time, there wasn't going to be much that he could offer 2 years after leaving WWE in 96. By now, Austin, Rock, DX, Goldberg, everybody is, you know, the business is moving in that direction. And I didn't think he was going to be able to come in and match any of those guys in popularity. Plus, when you're there with someone like Hogan and all the other political stuff, what was he really going to do there? How long was he there? 5 months or something?
Exactly.
No,
Not even. He was gone like that.
He made his debut at Fall Brawl, right? After War Games, how he just appeared in the cage with the smoke and the mirrors around him. And that's the definition of Warrior, smoke and mirrors. They were just trying to build that mystique around him. And it's just a shame. You know, it's a good comparison, Greg, to what you've been saying about CM Punk recently, where, he's a big name. But again, if Warrior were to come back in the Attitude Era, there would be no place for him. You make a really good point there. And it's like, what would they have done with him? You know, WCW found something to do with him. And even then, it's like, what else they could have done with him? Warrior was kind of past his time. And also, man, Greg, how much did it break your heart to see the spot that Bret Hart was in at this point in his career? On paper, Bret and Sting for the United States title, that could main event any show. But here, in this version of WCW, it's a damn shame.
They're third to last. Yeah.
I know, Sting and Bret should have been much bigger and presented much bigger. I mean, the title was even on the line. It just didn't give you that feel of, holy shit, it's Bret and Sting. That's what we should have been saying when that match. And we're like, oh, it's Bret and Sting. You know, it's WCW just that feeling of you were watching something special, because it wasn't special to them. You know, it was about the NWO and all of that stuff. And they weren't even, I don't even think they really appreciated that they had that match on their own show.
Yeah.
Right? Yes. And the NWO,
we all
at this point, this is around the point where the NWO, I feel like, had ran its course. Like the NWO, as I like to say with the bloodline right now, the NWO is jumping the shark at this point in the WCW timeline. This is where you kind of had to do the admin spreadsheet of who are the baby faces and who are the heels. You have NWO Black and White, NWO Hollywood over here led by Hogan. And you have the Wolf Pack led by Kevin Nash. And I'm like, why? Like, I get that the NWO has been over and will always be over until the end of time. But that doesn't mean keep them alive. They
were trying to keep them cool, I think, because NWO was cool when they started. But then a couple years went by. Now DX is a thing. Stone Cold Steve Austin is a thing. So they take aspects of the NWO, turn them babyface. I feel like the Wolf Pack was, you know, closest thing they were going to have to their DX or something. You know, like try to make a babyface version of that. But the dumbest thing was Sting being a part of that.
I mean,
just months after he was in the rafters for 18 months because they accidentally thought he might have joined the NWO. He was so butthurt that he went away for a year and a half. And then as soon as he comes back and has a match with Hogan, now I've got the red and black paint and I'm a babyface NWO member. I'm like, what the hell was the last 2 years for that?
Exactly. That's just, oh my gosh. Well, you know what?
Why is Kevin Nash your best friend now? You know?
Yeah, I know, right? After everything.
You know what? I think we've set the stage good enough. Let's go head first into this pay-per-view, opening up with a singles match for the WCW Television Championship. Chris Jericho defending against Raven. And we talked about this on our Starrcade review. Raven's gimmick is that he doesn't feel like wrestling anymore. And it's the weirdest gimmick ever because he pulls it here, he makes his way to the ring, and he says, just like in the match with Benoit on Starrcade, you know what? I don't feel like wrestling tonight. He had all this time to call off his match with Jericho, and he waits until right before the bell rings. It's such an odd gimmick. I mean, again, it's another example of, on paper, it's not a bad idea, but in execution, it's horrible, because you could do a gimmick where a wrestler just like, nope, I don't feel like doing this, but it makes Raven look like a chump. And Raven in WCW kind of was a chump.
It's just like, first off, before we continue, I got to give a heads up to Nicole with a big super chat over here. Thank you so very much. This is so generous of you. So awesome. Nicole says, hey guys, this is a show that when you watch it with a bunch of friends and beer, it's very fun.
I'm sure it is.
Couldn't agree more with that. Especially when you watch this opener. I mean, even if you didn't have a big old fat booze in your hand, like Jericho and Raven, that's a good match. And I feel like these guys had a very solid opening contest that the crowd was very into. But Tomas, you are absolutely right. Raven was going in there, and keeping in mind, we'll see the rest of the former Flock members a little bit later down the card. But Raven's got no flock anymore. He's kind of a loner. He's walking around, and he's an Orange Cassidy. He's lazy. He doesn't want to work anymore. Think like when the Wyatt family broke up, and think about what would happen if Bray Wyatt just didn't want to work. He just didn't want to work. Yeah, it's so lame. It's so
weirder.
Lame.
It's even weirder when it's a title shot. It's not like he's the champion.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, I didn't know I was supposed to wrestle him, so I'm not gonna. Like, I'm not defending my title. He has a chance for a title. It's like, now I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll pass.
He's the challenger. He doesn't want the television championship. And hey, this may have been reflecting of Raven's actual feelings. Like, I should have never left ECW. Like, there were guys around this time, Greg, that jumped ship, and I'm sure they regretted it the minute they did. Mike Awesome, Raven, Sandman. I remember when I went back and watched every WCW pay-per-view, and I said, what the fuck, Sandman was in WCW? Like, they must have offered him some fat money to jump ship, because that does not look right.
Yeah, and Raven, I wanted to go to WWE. I thought he would have been better if he went to WWE in '97 than WCW in '97. Mm-hmm. They had so much like talent, where I feel like he would have done well had he gone with them instead of WCW. But WCW was forking out the money, so
yeah, exactly. You look at all these stars in the show, and you know that the Ted Turner money, the Ted Turner money is strong in this era, even though these were the people that were going down with the ship. They were sinking with that ship.
God, they had nothing but money to lose in their hands. Yeah. But Raven and Jericho, believe it or not, despite the crappy start, they go in there and they have a really solid match. Jericho tries to lock in the Lion Tamer a couple of times. There's one case where he's too close to the ropes. Raven hits the Even Flow DDT, which I think is a much better name than the Raven effect, if you ask me. I love the Even Flow. It's like Jake the Snake Roberts. Like, no one else can hit a better DDT than Raven, I feel like, except for Jake the Snake. Once he puts Jericho's lights out, that should have been it. New TV champion. Jericho kicked out of it, though. And I'm like, okay.
And, I'm not against the idea, because we've seen this many times in wrestling. I'm not against the idea of a wrestler in a slump. And that's what Raven was. He was in a slump. He was losing a lot. They were acknowledging his losing streak on TV a lot. But it was weird. Like, just the execution and the time it was being, and just Raven's weird, like, well, no, I'm not going to wrestle. It was just, again, I think that's just the theme of this show, is poor execution.
It was, and it was a little weak that he didn't want to wrestle, but then all it took was Jericho just trolling him on the mic. And then he ran in there to fight. So, and plus, kicking out of the Even Flow, Jericho's WCW theme was a knockoff of Even Flow for Pearl Jam, and you can't get beat by your own theme song. It's a rule. That's why he kicked out. Yeah. So
it's one of those unwritten rules.
If his theme song was something else, he would have lost.
Keeping in mind, I feel like it would have made more sense for Jericho's character at the time, because this is around the point where he was trying to feud with Goldberg, right? Right before he left to go to the WWE. I feel like this is around the time he tried to goad Goldberg into a fight. But Jericho, all he does is trash talk Raven. Like, if Jericho is another, like, sneaky heel, if he's a cocky heel, if Raven walks away, shouldn't he be like, okay, you don't want to wrestle? That means I keep my title. All right, see ya.
And this was practically heel versus heel, so Jericho had no reason to goad him into the match. But
it's my favorite Jericho post-match victory after he beats him with the walls. I think Raven goes for the even flow again. Jericho counters after Canyon jumps on the apron and gets knocked off.
Canyon,
Jericho locks in the walls and Raven taps out. And then he just does this little jump up and down. He keeps telling the referee, Raven, just the way he's doing his little jump. It's my favorite post-match celebration of all time from Chris Jericho.
You bring up a good point, Greg. Canyon tries to make the interference, and oh my God, play a drinking game every single time someone interferes in a match. Swerve after swerve after swerve. It was WCW's favorite thing in the world. And you know what? I was not a fan. I was way too young to be a fan during the WCW times, but how frustrating must it have been, Greg? You didn't order a lot of the pay-per-views, but I'm sure you kept up with Nitro. How frustrating was it that let's say if there was an 8-match card, 7 of them had run-ins?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I actually did order this on pay-per-view.
Man,
I was one of the lucky ones. My feed did not get shut off, so I had no idea. No idea. I still have the recording of it. I just had no idea it happened until like the next day when they're like apologizing on Nitro for it. So I was just one of the lucky ones. I remember when it turned off. Well, we'll talk about that match later. But when they spill out of the ring, when everybody lost the feed, my screen did go black, but it just came back, and I was able to see the whole match. So my feed just stayed intact. I have no idea why. I lived in rural North Carolina back then.
Mm-hmm.
Really crappy cable system. Who knows? So our lines just got crossed or something. But I didn't lose the match.
They must have looked at your feed and was like, this is a WWF fanboy. Let's try and pull him to the other side.
I know, right?
And interrupt everybody else's feed.
Watch this whole pay-per-view. Up next is one of these, I guess, bonus matches. There's so many of them. It's Wrath versus Meng. I got a confession to make, guys. I never got the appeal of Haku. I don't know what it is. Maybe you guys can enlighten me a little. I have talked about this online. Apparently, he's one of the toughest bitches on the planet. Like, he's bitten people's noses off. He's a tough motherfucker. I don't deny that. But every single time I watch a Haku match or a Meng match, I'm just like, he wrestles just like anybody else.
I'm going to let Greg take this one because I never really grew up watching Haku or Meng matches. I had a few of them on VHS, but again,
that really reputation of his is like post-retirement stories that you hear. It wasn't really his gimmick. I mean, he was a savage, guy who was definitely tough and strong and had that, that hard head and was vicious, but he wasn't portrayed in wrestling the way the stories of him are portrayed in shoot interviews and podcasts and things like that, because he really was like a tough son of a bitch. He just wasn't, a big star, just like one of those quiet guys that, if there was a scuffle somewhere publicly, he's going to take care of business. But he was in the pro wrestling world, it would just be like, a lot of guys who can, boxers or MMA fighters might not have a whole lot of charisma to them, but they can still kick ass. So I think his gimmick wasn't really much about that. It was just, he was King Haku and the Islanders tag wrestler. And then when he was in WCW as Meng, he was a little more hard-nosed, kind of that bodyguard-looking guy at first, and definitely a menacing figure. But basically all the crazy stories we hear about him about being the toughest guy ever in wrestling, that was never really spoken about him on TV. It was just the way it was. So I think the level of star that he was, I don't think he was pushed too far. I think he was just a medium-sized star pretty much everywhere. So I don't think in terms of the size of star he became, I think it matched pretty much his in-ring ability and his, and charisma guy. He was just never a guy that was going to really talk.
Yeah. I mean, you shouldn't have a guy like Meng talk. You shouldn't have a guy like Meng talk because look at him. Like, this is a freaking savage-looking guy.
He has never won a singles championship.
No, he hasn't.
Crazy.
He's been king of the ring though. Like,
I know he was king. He was
King Haku. He was King Haku. I don't know if that's because he won the tournament or not.
He took the crown. Harley Race was king, and Harley Race got injured.
That's right.
And so Bobby Heenan made a new king, and then Harley Race came back, and then the two of them had a match at the Royal Rumble in '89, and the winner became the permanent king. And that's when Haku won, and then Race left and went back to WCW.
We need to slate Rumble '89 for a watch along.
It's a boring match. Meng and Harley Race, but
a match with Harley Race.
Yeah, and so Bobby Heenan was like in the neutral corner. He was just going to go with the winner. So he just sat there and waited for his two guys to fight it out. Whoever won, he would support. Yeah, and that was pretty sure that was Race's last match in WWF right around that time. He was
wow.
Double
but
agent
anywho,
Bobby Heenan.
Wrath versus Meng. This was nothing special.
It was a match.
Wrath seemed like just a big guy that WCW was kind of trying to get over. But then again, WCW was trying to get everyone over. It looks like everyone was going to be their next big star.
One thing I will say about Wrath, he was Adam Bomb in WWE.
He was.
That's right. Yes, I knew there was some connection.
And then they brought him into WCW. But then it was around, he was already there like the previous year. I think it was around this time they were starting to really kind of push him. He started getting big, like his physique. He was super jacked, even way more than he was in WWF as Adam Bomb. He was starting to look like chronic Brian Clark.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm pretty sure they ran a streak with him on TV where he was undefeated too. And I think Kevin Nash is the one that beat that streak too, if memory serves. But it was somewhere around this time. He was already there previously doing the Mortis stuff when Kanyon was Mortis. And then if I remember right, this was all part of his push. So I think this match actually did have a reason to be on the pay-per-view, even though it was totally boring. It was a way to keep moving him. Because I think they were building, I think Nash might have taken out Wrath before he got to Goldberg. So like Nash was the streak ender type of thing. But this was part of Wrath's push, if I remember. It just didn't last too long.
These guys went less than 5 minutes. I feel like Meng really put Wrath over. It was his job to make him look good, make him look strong.
Well, not
crowd
just
really
Meng.
wasn't into it.
Not just Meng, but Tony Schiavone on commentary was really trying his damnedest to put Wrath over, because Wrath hits his big move, his big finish on Meng, and Tony Schiavone like puts this over as like the most impressive feat of strength he's ever seen in his life, which is it's so funny to me looking back on it. But Wrath beats Meng. It's a very meh Haas fight. It's nowhere near the caliber of something you'll see today, like Miro and Powerhouse Hobbs. Not even close. But you know, I think it did its. I think it had its purpose.
I just love how Wrath wins the match, and then they're like, "Oh, Wrath wins next." Yeah, like no,
that's why this is one of those matches. If they want to continue building Wrath, just do that on Nitro. You know, that's what you needed to do here. You know, with this, you didn't have. I would put, if he was going to be on a pay-per-view match, I would have put him in there against someone a little bit higher up on the card than Meng. Somebody. I mean, he beat a big, rough and tough dude, but I'd beat a guy that was just U.S. champion last month or something. I'd beat somebody like that if I was going to continue Wrath's run. And so if I'm going to put him in a pay-per-view match, I'm looking at the rest of the card here. I'd put him in there against Buck Bagwell or something, or and just have him murder it.
We'll get to Bagwell. Bagwell.
Dare I say put Wrath over Bret Hart?
Oh, gosh. Maybe. I don't know.
And we're going a little too far there, buddy. A little too far. I want to rewind a minute because we talk about the pay-per-view going over and the feed getting cut off and all these things that could have cut. You know, what's a better way to kick off this pay-per-view? Let's have the commentators jaw jack for 10 minutes. Let's have the Nitro girls put on like a 20-minute performance. And then let's have Rick and Scott Steiner go out there and cut a promo for a match they're already going to have tonight. There's so much stuff you could have cut from the show.
Had a habit of opening their pay-per-views quietly, like start off instead of just with a bang, start off with 20 minutes of chatter from the announce team or whatever. And I think that earlier interview it was Buff Bagwell and Rick Steiner. There was a Rick Steiner interview, and Buff came out to try to pretend he was going to be friends with him, and it was a way to set up what they were doing later. But still, you could have done that on Nitro and done it in a video package before the match or something to cut time. But just to open with a stage interview like that with Mean Gene and Rick Steiner to open a pay-per-view in '98 was a weird way to do it.
I told Zack this while I was watching it. WCW needed their own version of Heat.
Yeah,
they did.
Yeah.
They needed something like that where they could just pour all of these pre-match interviews, a match or two, just so they don't waste pay-per-view time. And that was just another notch of frustration I had in this. Up next, believe it or not, is something I actually enjoyed. It's a #1 contenders match for the Cruiserweight Championship. Juventud Guerrera versus everyone's favorite wrestling shooter, Disco Inferno. As much as we hate Disco, I think he's a piece of shit and he needs to get kicked off the internet. This was a fun match.
You know,
I watched Halloween Havoc '99 last night, and he did a couple of good moves in the ring. I'm like, am I praising Disco here? Am I hearing myself right? But I did.
Yeah,
it wasn't that bad.
I mean, here's the thing. I'm gonna outright say this: if Disco Inferno wasn't so much a piece of shit, he could have a work job right now in WWE as a producer. He has a mind. He has the mind for wrestling, but everything he spews out is a bunch of horseshit.
And he's not respected though, like amongst a lot of the wrestlers today. Like a lot of fans shit on him and stuff, but he's not a guy that I think a lot of wrestlers would want to be an agent or producer because nobody likes him. He's got a bad reputation of just kind of being there, kind of being a joke. A lot of people, roll their eyes at him or whatever. But some of that I thought was fair. Some of it I didn't because of what you said, that this match wasn't really bad. Disco was not incapable of doing stuff out there. I think he just doesn't have a great reputation of being really well liked.
Keeping in mind,
anti-Shane Helms.
Yeah, keep in mind, he's also in there with a freaking phenomenal opponent like the Juice, Juventud. Yeah. Like, of course he's going to have a great match. And this is another prime example of something Tomas and I have been talking about for a while. Why are the assholes in real life always cast as fun baby faces?
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, like, I know, it is a theme.
I don't get it. I don't get it. Like, they're portraying like the complete opposite of who they are in real life. Like, if you want to get the fans to hate you in real life, just be a heel.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
this
crazy.
Match you could have done on Nitro too. If this match is for a title shot, why didn't they just put it on Nitro?
Mm-hmm.
The way this card is booked, it was almost like they needed more matches or something. Like, how are we going to fill all this time? Let's just have let's do the number one contender match on the same show.
I mean,
that all goes into all that time that they went over. They could have just had this match right on Nitro. The winner gets a title shot this Sunday at Halloween Havoc, and then do Kidman and Disco later.
Stone Cold Steve Austin, nah. Undertaker, nah. We, the fans, want Disco Inferno pulling double duty.
Yeah.
That's what'll get him over. Like.
But hey, at least it wasn't a bad match, and at least it was okay. And
Disco had a pretty mean pile driver too, and that was
that's what I complimented on him last night. That's right. He hit a pile. Yeah. I forgot who he's even wrestling now, but he hit a pile driver, and I'm like, that was a goddamn great pile driver. And I said on the stream,
you guys keep going. I'm gonna grab water.
Executed.
No worries.
Perfectly well executed pile driver. I've never seen one better. And Disco did it.
Yeah, Disco. Yeah, no, he's got a really good mind for the business, but he's just not well respected or well liked, and that's why he doesn't really have much of a job right now. But Disco pins Hoovy after a really huge pile driver, which I believe he calls the Disco Fever. I don't remember if that's the actual name, but
I'm not sure. I don't remember. I didn't memorize Disco's move, luckily.
Yeah, it was a solid enough match. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the Juice is freaking underrated as all heck. I mean, that is another key with these WCW shows, Greg, is I feel like these undercard wrestlers were so underutilized compared to the other, the tippy top of the card where Hogan was, where Warrior was. Hogan and Warrior weren't going to have a great match. The undercard, you can expect to have a really solid, overlooked, underrated match. But speaking of, while Tomas is getting water, Fit Finlay versus Alex Wright. Greg, this was dubbed by Professor Mike Tenay as a bonus match. It was.
It definitely was. And the way Alex was dancing, it was almost a boner match because it was very special.
Hey.
Yeah, I do it every day the same way in the mirror as Alex Wright. I've been practicing, getting my technique down. It's awesome. It's awesome. You guys.
Hey, Greg, do you think Alex Wright? Do you think Alex Wright is proud of his son, Ludwig Kaiser, right now in WWE?
I hope he is. I hope he's proud of Ludwig. That's right. They probably are really, aren't they?
Do you think he's proud of his godchild, Daniel Garcia, in AEW right now?
Oh,
that would be great if we get all them together. Tony Khan should bring Alex Wright and just chuck him out there with everybody else who dances. Go out there and dance.
Yeah. Oh, I can see that.
I'll pay you $5,000. Just go out there and dance.
Yeah, exactly.
Das Wunder Kid.
Tony Khan will be like, "Hey guys, remember Alex Wright? No. Well, you should. Here he is."
I do. I remember him.
He's going to undergo a big change because he was still dancing boy Alex Wright here. Next year at Halloween Havoc '99, he's Berlin with the Wall.
That's right.
So we
and
watched
you know
that
what?
last night, and I'm like, oh wow, he's got that mohawk thing going on and all that.
The quick backstory: Alex Wright is one of those straight shooter wrestlers that WCW brought in. They slapped this dancing gimmick on him, and it got him over to the point where people still reference it to this day. So that's that for you. But him and Finlay have a very boring match. The fans chant boring, and when your fans are chanting boring on a pay-per-view, that's a very bad sign. I can't recall a single thing from this match because it was just
it's not. Let's be real here, Tomas. It's not indicative of Finlay's or Alex Wright's talent. And I haven't had a chance to say this about Alex Wright yet on any of these pods, but I've always found him super underrated. Anytime I watch his matches, I think he's solid. If you like, I don't know if either of you remember this match, but him versus Flying Brian at the Great American Bash 1995. That is unironically one of my favorite matches from WCW. I love that thing. It's so good.
Yeah.
But
yeah, he would have been, I think he came in so young. They made a big deal about him being 18. I actually think at the time he would have been better off in WWE. If they would have gotten him an 18-year-old, I just think they would have spent more time with him, you know, and helped develop him. Him in WCW, they were just kind of throwing him to the wolves. In WWE, they'd put him in the ring and have him work with people and you know, and just season him and try to market him and find something for him to do significantly and actually make him one of their characters on their roster instead of just, you know, a young, okay wrestler that sometimes gets TV and pay-per-view matches and sometimes doesn't. Never really had anything.
Yeah. Well, he could have been a William Regal.
Offs with Disco. He didn't have much of a character, never had a story or real long-term feuds or anything like that. Maybe he could have gotten that in WWE as a young person with having Pat Patterson and Michael Hay, guys like that around him, you know.
People more like with the mindset of wanting to help young guys instead of just, you know, cash their checks and feed their egos like in WCW. Because, you know, Nash and Hogan weren't there to train the future. They were there to make money and just, you know, put over their own egos.
Yeah.
But we digress.
I think Vince could have looked at Alex Wright and be like, oh, God damn, look at him, you know, and he just really, you know, and give him that little up and down look, know that he's 18, know that he's got his whole life ahead of him. You know, I want to make this kid a star, one of my stars.
He could have done that. And he also, if he did sign him when Alex Wright was 18, he very much could have been the precursor to somebody like Rene Dupree. Because remember when Rene Dupree was first being pushed and how young he was, Rene Dupree never got over the hump in the Ruthless Aggression era. Never did. So I'm very skeptical that Alex Wright would have done the same thing with people like The Rock, Stone Cold, Undertaker, Triple H on the rise all around him. I don't think.
Hopefully he would have been in by then, hopefully established, you know, but those guys probably would have leapfrogged him anyway. But then also, you know, if he would have came in 95 and 96, he would have fallen victim to the wrath of Shawn, who would have been threatened by him. Vince McMahon looks at him differently, and I don't like that, you know, I want that look. So
very true.
There could have been political problems for him there, but I definitely think the environment overall just might have been better because it was just less disorganized than WCW was. They had more of the shit together type of thing. So I thought someone like who's super young like that would have just been better off in an organization that just has a little bit more understanding and isn't just flying by the seat of their pants like WCW seemed to do.
Yeah, like Finlay flying by the seat of his pants, huh?
Yeah. All I did was write down reverse neck breaker for the win, so that's all I know about.
Double the time, put this on Thunder, and we could have had a solid match. But the fans didn't really care about this one.
And
kind of ended before it started. They got 5 minutes.
Put it on a preempted tape Thunder at 3 a.m.
Well, yeah. And the worst thing about it was these guys are both solid workers, like we've talked about. But the problem was there was no heat. No. You know, like the crowd did not know who to cheer for. Greg, did you feel like you got extra value for your money with this match?
No.
Tomas,
I lost value. I want my money back. I still want my money back. I'm in litigation to try to retrieve my $40.
Do I have a treat for you? You love Alex Wright and Finlay. How about Saturn versus Lodi? Who the fuck is Lodi?
He used to live in my hometown. My friend referees a lot of his matches, or used to back in the day.
Really?
Lodi, I don't know how he was went to East Carolina University, and he was kind of a local guy around there. And I don't know how he got in WCW. But he worked the indie scene, I think, even after WCW. One of my buddies, he worked with him a few times and all of that. But he was actually from the same little town that I came from when he was like out there with the signs and stuff. But I never really knew his true story because I didn't know how he even had that connection and how he got in there. But he had a pay-per-view match. I kind of just thought he was going to be the dude running around with the signs, but no, he's actually in the ring on pay-per-view.
Guy Lodi.
I don't know who he is other than he used to live in the same town as me. And some of
Bradley Kane.
Some of the people that I knew him. But
that is wow. That is wild because I went into the show and I saw him. I'm like, who?
Yeah.
And he goes out there and he has a 3-minute match with Saturn.
Yeah. He was mostly a jobber. He wasn't winning a lot of matches at this point. Whenever he was in the ring and whenever he did get physical, he was usually getting his ass kicked. So at least this one was painless and quick. And Saturn put him down with his what do you do? The driver, the DVD?
Yeah, DVD, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, Saturn goes out there. He has an Army Ranger gimmick per his background, but this match, again, not very memorable. This is not good for the trajectory of this show, if you haven't guessed by this point.
Yeah.
And aside from a solid opening contest and a great entrance stage, this has been a pretty dull pay-per-view, all things considered.
Yeah.
Well, things do get livened up a bit with our next match.
Yeah, WCW Cruiserweight title is on the line. Per the earlier contest, Disco Inferno is challenging Billy Kidman for the title.
No. He's not challenging Billy Kidman. He's challenging Kidman.
Oh, yeah. I wrote Billy Kidman on the ticker. Yeah, I'm
I
just
know, but I just had to bring that point up because I remember them announcing him as Kidman. And I'm like, and you wonder where Vince got his idea of cutting people's first names for absolutely no reason. Because they've been doing it even back here. And I know it was because Kidman was part of the flock, but we know him as Billy Kidman. And I saw that, and they announced him as just Kidman. And I'm like,
Kidman now.
Whew.
Yeah. This is a precursor to the White family split of 2014, because Kidman was a flock disciple, rather, as was Saturn, as was, I don't think Lodi was a member of the flock.
Apparently he was.
Yeah, I think he was. Yeah,
no
I think so.
Freaking way.
Yeah, he was with people. He was in a group, so yeah, it had to be the flock. Yeah.
Yeah. The flock was a cool group, but they just decided to split them up for no reason, and everybody just went off their separate ways. Billy Kidman looks like the biggest beneficiary of this flock disintegration, because he has a cruiserweight title around his waist, and holy cruiserweight wrestling, Tomas! This is a good match. Disco Inferno. Again, a working double duty. He just had a 10-minute match with the Juice, and now here he is working a great match with Kidman.
He wrestled a combined 20 minutes on this night, and that was more than any other wrestler on this pay-per-view. So we have to say that Disco Inferno is the workhorse of this pay-per-view.
No, actually, no. He might have been. I actually think that goes to Rick Steiner for this pay-per-view. No, seriously, Rick Steiner.
Really? Oh, yeah.
What we're about to talk about here.
Yeah.
This is one of the craziest performances I've ever seen by one man in my life.
That is very fair. We will talk about Rick Steiner later. And, considering he was probably the bright light, because I saw I'll say all my thoughts were there, but I get where you're coming from. This match was pretty solid. And, give props to Inferno and Kidman for going out there and putting on a pretty solid match. I've always loved Kidman. I poke fun at him on our podcast for his later years in WWE, but he was one of those pioneers of the cruiserweight division where I feel like they saw something in him, but as we know, in a year or so, they're going to put him in that program with Hogan, which again, on paper, should elevate Kidman to the next level. But Hulk Hogan looked at him and said, "What the hell is a Billy Kidman? I ain't doing that job, brother." And, it just continued downhill for him. But, we always saw something in Kidman.
Yeah, they liked him right from the word. Pre-flock, I feel like WCW felt like he was their 1, 2, 3 kid. He was kind of similar size. He was booked in similar matches. And then putting him in the flock was a way to kind of start moving him along in a singles run here, developing an identity for him. And then he broke away from him. And this is where I feel like he's had his true, real good kind of singles run is, for as much as someone like him can have. So I always liked Kidman, but I always just thought of him as cruiserweight division type of guy, never really top of the card. So the fact that he even got up there and did anything with Hogan was kind of surprising to me.
Yeah. I mean,
to those heights.
Probably
pushed right back down the ladder because Hogan found out he didn't like Pasta Mania. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, we don't talk about Pasta Mania.
What did you say, brother? What did you say? Anyway, Kidman beats Disco Inferno with the shooting star press. Like, I don't know. Disco Inferno did hit his pile driver at one point in this. I didn't like it as much as him and the Juice, though. Didn't like this match as much as Disco and the Juice, but this was still competitive enough. Kidman retains the title, and he has an even better showing at Starrcade in a couple months because Kidman is the one working double duty on that show. But yeah, competitive enough. But Greg, you were talking about Rick Steiner and him being the workhorse of this pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this. For the World Tag Team titles, it is... Are you ready, Tomas? Are you ready for this? All right. It's the Giants and Scott Steiner defending against Rick Steiner and Buff Bagwell. Tomas, I don't know how you're not having a stroke right now. These are two random tag teams and a half.
That's not the reason why I'm having a stroke. I'm having a stroke because Rick and Scott were scheduled to have a match on this show. It's this big brother versus brother feud, which I love those, by the way. And then at the beginning of this pay-per-view, they changed it to a tag team title match in which Rick Steiner and Buff Bagwell have to win in order for him to get a match with Scott, but he already had a match scheduled with Scott. So, what's the point of this?
The pay-per-view, it was even weirder because I think it was the pay-per-view before Fall Brawl. We just watched it, and I was getting so pissed because they do a deal where Buff Bagwell injures his neck. And they take 30 minutes to lower him, put him on a stretcher, take him to the ambulance. I'm pretty sure that was the month before this.
Yep.
At Fall Brawl, only for him to bust out of the ambulance and turn on Rick Steiner after Rick Steiner trusted him. So then they do the whole thing again. Here it is just 1 month later. They open the show, and Buff's like, nah, for real, I want to be your partner this time. And then dumbass Rick Steiner, not learning his lesson, I guess, is like, okay.
This is the big split between Rick and Scott. And you know what? Scott has gone on to be a star on his own. This was Rick's chance to be that big breakout babyface star. And what a better way to do that? Just book the match between Rick and Scott, put Rick over, and you could have did something to him. Because, regardless of how I feel about Rick as a person now, because he's a piece of shit, back then, he had charisma. He had wrestling ability. They could have made something out of him. But, again, in a normal world, this is such an easy thing to book, but no, they got to get the Giant involved. They got to get Bagwell involved. They got to get the tag team titles involved. They got to do this match. For some reason, Big Show's smoking a cigarette on the way to the ring, and I'm just pulling my freaking hair out the entire time. What was this match?
I don't know why they added this, especially when they're already having time issues, but they wanted to add a second thing, I guess, just to give the fans a Rick Steiner babyface moment, I guess. I don't know.
It was even worse because the whole idea, the whole gimmick of this match is Rick Steiner has to win to get his hands on his brother.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Scott is in there working 3/4 of the match.
Yeah. So he's just not going to be able to get him one-on-one, and then when they get in there, Buff immediately turns.
Oh my God.
Instantly, as soon as the match starts. So then it's 2-on-1, and he wins anyway. He just beats them both. And I remember watching that night because one thing I will say about Rick Steiner, when they split these guys up, Rick did not become Marty Jannetty. He was relevant. I mean, hell, we watched Halloween Havoc 99 last night. He faced Benoit for the championship and beat him, I think.
Yeah,
maybe the other way around, or for the TV title or something. So he was always doing stuff. He just got over. He run around the ring and bark and dogface gremlin and all that. So
he was over.
He wasn't pushed to that. They didn't Tucker him.
No.
He still had stuff to do and was getting reactions from the crowd. But by this point, physically, the Steiners past their prime anyway, in my mind.
He was so over. The dog-faced gremlin was just not all bark back then because the crowd was doing the Braun Breaker chants back then, and they were doing all this whole. Rick Steiner seems like the next big thing in WCW.
I thought it was crazy the way he beat both of these guys pretty much clean. He didn't need any help. His back was against the ropes. All the deck was stacked against him. Then he wins. Then he gets the match with Scott, and then Buff interferes on that too.
So because I see what WCW was trying to do here. Like you guys said, they were trying to make Rick Steiner looked like this big badass babyface. And while I was watching that, I did see that there, but I just don't think it was worth to sacrifice good storytelling just for that, because I did believe in Rick as a babyface. It was really impressive that He won the match on his own, and then he went in there with Scott and had a halfway decent match with him. But like you said, the Buff Bagwell turn that you saw from a million miles away, and then in the match, Buff Bagwell interferes wearing the Bill Clinton mask, and I'm just like, what's the point of him wearing the Clinton mask? It's not a surprise that Bagwell's going to turn on. What was the point?
He had all that time to run back there, put a suit on.
Yeah.
And all that. I'm like, was all that necessary to tell this story of that Buff's a piece of shit and Rick is stupid for believing him? Like, they could have simplified that a little bit, but I thought it was almost comical how strong they made Rick look, because he beat both of them in the handicap match and won the tag team titles by himself, and then beats his brother with all sorts of interference and just says, I'm going to kick everybody's ass that gets in my way. And he did. That's why I was, I feel like he had the biggest night here. Like, he won 2 championships, 2 matches, beat 3 guys.
And that was the other thing. Rick winning the tag team titles with a man that just turned on him.
Yeah, I know. Right. Yeah. Technically they did win the titles together. And I think that played into Rick's craziness and just the way he is kind of made him the right guy to like pull off a victory like this, just because he's kind of nuts. You know, I think if you hit him too many times in the head, he might not even notice. I think like he's the one of those type of guys that's just crazy enough to be able to pull off something like this. So it did kind of fit who he was at the time, but still, super, super ridiculous.
It was, It's like, I agree with you in that regard, but just like, it would have been just so easier to go from point A to point B, stick with the regularly scheduled match of Rick versus Scott. Sure, do all the crazy stuff in between, but, just put Rick over.
Yeah.
They could have, look at this, combined 13-minute match. That could have been one match, could have accomplished the same thing without.
Yeah.
It's so sad that all this bullshit overshadows what I think just might be the most impressive move performed all night by the Giant, believe it or not. There's a point where after Buff turns on Rick, Scott is beating him up in the ring, of course, because per the stipulation, if Rick wins, Scott has to fight him one-on-one, but he doesn't care. The Giant goes in there. He gets on the top rope, and he hits Scott with a missile dropkick after Rick moves out of the way. The Giant with a missile dropkick.
Paul White was very impressive back then. But, it's very weird to say, but remember, before he got his tumor removed, he was like an athletic machine. Like, he was doing things that meant his side should not be able to do. But, I'm glad he got it removed, and Paul White is still with us today as, Yeah,
he used to throw drop kicks. He could do nip ups and stuff, and he was in jobber mode here. He was 4 months away from going to WWE, so they were jobbing hard. He was losing all the time. So losing in a handicap match here might have been another part of the reason why they threw this match on there. Let's just continue getting the Giant as many losses as we can before he goes to Vince. So, and this one in a handicap sense. So
let's make him look like a chump because let's have him be the one who's pinned. And then, because logically in storytelling form, Rick Steiner should be pinning the Giant to go on to face his brother. Yeah. This was this was probably, in terms of like overall storytelling, this might have been the most offensive thing on the show until the next match. Until the next match comes on, Tomas. A battle of the outsiders.
Yep. Scott Hall versus Kevin Nash.
That should write itself. Just the fact that it's Scott Hall versus Kevin Nash, that should make you want to see this match. A brotherhood that has been split up in half.
Since Greg is the guest on the show, I'm going to ask him. Hey, Greg, how did we get here?
Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. Well, this is going to be 4 years after these two guys opened the United Center together at SummerSlam. They had a great match there. I thought it was awesome. So we're 4 years past that. Now this is when they're doing the Scott Hall's alcoholism thing, and they had split up. And then Hall, I think he showed up in this match drunk. I can't remember, but the story in this match was just Kevin Nash wanting to teach his friend a lesson, and they had their match, crushed him, and then he walked away for the finish. So how we got to that point, I think it was mostly just Nash trying to be a tough love type of friend. But this, again, an outsider split in a feud, I feel like should have been way better than this. And they didn't even necessarily need to go in that direction to make it good, tying into, the alcoholism and all of that. They tried this with WWE too. It didn't work. It was stupid with Steve Austin. So, this was, I actually didn't hate the finish so much because Nash just kind of walking away like that, I don't know. I can be okay with that. No title was on the line. There was no real stakes here. This is more just a personal thing. So I guess a win and loss doesn't matter when you're dealing with something maybe this personal or serious or whatever is the story they were going for here. But
I can 100% see where you're coming from.
The feud itself.
It just makes Kevin Nash look like the biggest fucking dork on planet Earth, where he's in this very personal feud with Scott Hall. I mean, Scott Hall comes out in the beginning of the match and attacks Nash. They do the whole beat down angle right before the match. Hall gets on the mic. He taunts Nash for a bit. They have it's not the worst match in the world. I mean, I think Hall and Nash do have good chemistry together. I mean, they are really good friends in real life. But just that finish where it's like Nash wanting to prove a point, but he still walks off and makes him look like the biggest dork on planet Earth because he's still fucking lost. It's just so odd. It's so weird.
What is so wrong with Scott Hall taking a pinfall loss in 1998? What is so wrong with that? I think... Like, if he wanted to prove a point, like, he should have just outright beat his friend here. But to your point, Greg, the story of this match was Kevin Nash, who was one of the leaders of the Wolfpack, and Tomas even mentioned, the Wolfpack theme song with Kevin Nash just does not fit at all.
No, I said with Sting. Sting.
Yeah, but
with Kevin Nash is just cringe.
Yeah, Kevin Nash too. It doesn't fit. But the thing is, Kevin Nash is trying to get his best friend out of this rut, right? He's trying to encourage him to go to AA meetings. He's trying to encourage him to go into rehab. Kevin Nash is the baby face, and he is going in there, and the alcoholic is the bad guy. Like,
well, I think maybe that's part of it. I think, Nash kind of had the pencil, I think, at this time. He was kind of booking, so he probably came up with all this stuff.
He was booking, not
but
Vince
I'm trying to
Russo.
think of other examples in matches where someone has come out and intentionally lost in order to prove a bigger point. So it's not that weird. We've seen people come out and get intentional disqualifications to prevent somebody from winning a belt or something like that, like scenarios like that. So if I had to guess, the story was here. It wasn't about Scott Hall, WCW not wanting to give him a pinfall loss, or even Hall wanting to do the job. I don't think Hall would care about letting his friend beat him. He should just put a boot in his chest and beat him. I would have done that. I would have just had Kevin Nash put the boot on his chest, have the referee count, and be like, "This is, you see how I humiliated you?" But I think if I had to guess, the story is Nash wanting to teach Scott Hall a lesson and show him that I don't give a shit about a win or a loss. I'm here to show you what an idiot you're being. And I mean, even at the time you could say, he was booking, so he can still, it's not like he's going to cost him title matches. He can just book himself in one. So the loss wouldn't hurt him. But I think, there's been other instances in wrestling where we've seen people come in and intentionally lose because there's a bigger reason, a better reason for them to lose or something like that. That's just fair. my only way of looking at it is in the story. They're trying to tell a story here. If you've dealt with somebody in your family or a friend with alcoholism, sometimes you do want to punch him in the face. You don't really care about getting an official victory over him in the record books. You just want to teach him a damn lesson. And so maybe in storyline, the only way Kevin Nash can physically beat this guy up without getting arrested is to have a match with him. And so he did. Yeah. He proved this point and walked away to show him it's not about me beating you. It's about
actually very fair.
About beating you down and showing you that you need to, get your shit together. This is my guess, but I barely even remember what led up to that and stuff. So that would be my guess is the way it was booked. But just walking away and intentionally losing. Wow.
Yeah, and like I said, it wasn't the worst match in the world. Considering who's in the match. It was. I thought it was decent. All things considered.
Yeah, they're both really good workers too when they work together. Scott Hall's better than Nash, but they had good matches, and I loved their SummerSlam '94 match. If you've never seen that, watch it. It's awesome. So Walter Payton and all that stuff is great. It's great stuff. So I've always liked both of them. The outsiders.
Yeah. Oh, me too. But Nash nails Scott Hall with not one but two jackknife power bombs in a row, and these are snug jackknives as well.
Yeah, that second one he muscled him up, right? And
The commentators even said, he struggled with that last one. Maybe he was fighting internally with it, but He
They were
put Scott
nasty.
Hall down with that one.
Yeah, and those stiff WCW rings too, just power bombs looked and sounded so much more vicious on those tight ass rings and loud rings they had.
Mhm. Yeah,
Also,
but
real quick about the commentators, I never thought that Mark Madden would be the voice of reason, but he had the call of the night during the tag team title match, and he's during the Rick and Scott match, and said, "Oh, this was originally supposed to be no disqualification. Is it a disqualification now? They also be no disqualification. They do it anyway." At this point in WCW,
I feel like this match would have been like a lot better with something like a street fight stipulation, because these guys, it's a personal feud and they can brawl all over the arena. But you know,
they were going to do it anyways.
They are going to do it anyways, you know, but okay, let's go and do some pure wrestling now, huh? It's Greg Morgan's favorite wrestler of all time, Bret the Hitman Hart, defending the WCW US title against the man called Sting from the NWO Wolfpack. And Sting, to Tomas's point, does very much look like a Hot Topic dork coming out to the Wolfpack theme song in the red face paint. But
Sting in the NWO made such little sense to me. Yeah, but
yeah. Well, wasn't Bret Hart in the NWO for a short time? He was like an NWO lackey.
Everybody was in the NWO.
Yeah, he was. I thought he was in the NWO here. Oh no, that might have been earlier on in the year. But yeah, he was in the NWO and earlier in '98. He was right there alongside Hogan. So I guess I don't know if he's he might be a black and white member here in this match. I don't remember. I don't remember. He's a heel.
Bret. So okay, honestly, watching this match, I have so many questions for you, Greg. Number one, how much did Bret's WCW music piss you off?
Yeah, it was horrible. Did you guys watch this on Peacock? His music when he leaves the ring is different when he comes in. I don't know what that's about. But I also didn't love his WCW theme at all.
No.
It was one of the things that I knew was going to be a big game changer when he went there, even before they screwed him up. I'm like, well, what's his theme? I just can't even imagine him coming out to anything other than his Bret music. So I knew it was going to suck before it even sucked.
The look on Bret's face, considering we are almost 1 year removed from the Montreal screw job, you could tell just by his body language and how he worked in the ring, he knew he made a mistake jumping ship to this company.
Well,
and
the thing is with Bret Hart, coming off of the Montreal screw job, the most infamous incident in wrestling history, and he jumps ship to WCW. Ted Turner's promotion should have made Bret Hart their top babyface to take down the NWO. Not that this is a fantasy booking sort of podcast or anything like that, because they did have Goldberg on the horizon. You could have done Goldberg later. You could have told a great story with Bret Hart as the Hitman style babyface, taking down NWO members left and right, taking down the outsiders. But no, they just made him a lackey second fiddle to Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, and they weren't going to put any creative effort behind him. They just had him there. Bischoff just got him to get him. Get another big one away from WWE. I don't think they were excited to get him because of all the great things they could do with him. I think they were excited to get him just to get him.
Just the
way they kind of operated back then. So, but yeah, this is a dream match that should have been a dream match, but kind of wasn't.
Yeah, but I have to correct myself when I talk about Bret's body language. We also do have to remember this is like 6 months removed from Owen's death.
No, it's before.
No,
it's before.
It was before. Yeah, it was before.
Oh wait, Owen died in '99.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for the correction.
So he'd been there less than a year at this point, but already he'd gone through a lot, Bret, in WCW, and it was pretty obvious that it wasn't going to be. Times.
Again, you're right. A dream match that should have been a dream match. Sting and Hogan. I only said that because my whole setup almost fell out. Sting and Bret for the United States Championship. Again, on paper, and I mean, it wasn't a horrible match, but you could tell Bret's just going through the motions.
You're right.
Yeah.
It was quite good. I don't know, but I wanted this match to be excellent, and it was just good to me. Bret Hart is Bret Hart. He's a technician in there, and he's very sound. And I thought Sting met him halfway. I thought Sting did some really solid things in this match. Made a very fiery comeback, as we should all expect from the Stinger. But Greg, I've been wanting to ask you this for a while. Do you prefer Bret's in-ring work as a babyface or as a heel? Because he was working heel here, and I feel like a lot of his babyface. Yeah, no, because I feel like a lot of his best matches, the ones I can think of, his matches with Owen in '94, Like his matches with Shawn, even he was best as a babyface. I think.
But I liked his ring work as a babyface, but he knew exactly what to do as a heel. He had plenty of heel training, and he knew how to work heel and stuff. It's just his style is just a little more exciting when you work in babyface. But as a heel, I thought Bret was very good at that. Very vicious, cagey, sneaky. He had bits of flair and Eddie Guerrero and Tully Blanchard. He could do all the great heel stuff when he needed to. So he wasn't incapable. It's just as a fan, I liked him more as a babyface because his offensive flurries and things like that. But when he wanted to be a cheater, he could be a great one. And so I did very much enjoy Bret as a heel too.
And I think that really shined the most in this match when Bret was working Sting on the outside, really throwing him around the fans, and Bret getting into the fans' faces. It's Bret knows how to get heat.
Yeah. You screwed me. I don't care if you screwed me.
Yeah.
Just getting in the.
Bret knew when to turn it up.
One of Bret's babyface matches, like during his IC days, like Bobby Heenan was on commentary, and he was like, "Yeah, you talk about somebody having a salty past. So does Bret Hart. He's like salt, pepper, Tabasco. Like he's got everything." Bret,
yes.
Referring to his Hart Foundation days, in the 80s and stuff. When he was with Jimmy Hart and Jim Neidhart, they were shitheads back then too. So Bret knew how to do this. So the match, I think what they did in the match, all the work and everything was fine. It's just the way the match was featured and promoted. I mean, it was third from the top, so not horrible spot to be, but it wasn't being featured and built and promoted the way a Bret Hart and Sting match, I think, should have. I think it was just kind of in the background, part of the NWO feud. Not really a way WWE would have taken this and made a huge deal about it for the first time ever and blah, 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 and promoted the crap out of it and tons of in-ring promos leading up to the match
billboards, marketing,
this just didn't have.
I mean, it's a WrestleMania main event.
Yeah. They used the same finisher. I mean, it was a dream match for years in the early 90s and mid 90s, Sting against Bret Hart, how fun that match would be. A couple of beloved baby faces. And we never got to see it. And then when Bret went to WCW, oh, good, we've got an opportunity to get Bret and Sting now. But every time they were in the ring together, it didn't feel special.
No,
that's a bummer. Probably just because of the timing. If they could have done this in 94 or 95, probably a whole different deal.
Bret and Surfer Sting.
What's that?
Man, Bret and Surfer Sting.
Yeah. Imagine if Bret jumped in like 94 instead of Hogan.
Yeah.
Like that would have been Bret and Sting. Give me that at Bash at the Beach over Hogan and Flair any day.
Oh, I'm down. I'm down for that, man. But then
again, we have such a dream match with Bret and Sting, and it just like every other match, it has to have an overbooked finish. And now the referee takes a bump, and I will give Bret credit here. He beat the shit out of Sting with the baseball bat, made it look very believable. But, I just feel like a match of this magnitude should not have a finish like that. He basically beats Sting to death with his baseball bat. And then when the referee's coming to, he slaps on the sharpshooter. Sting can't respond. Bret retains the United States Championship. And then they do the big angle afterward with Sting getting taken out in the stretcher. But it just felt unnecessary.
To be fair, how else are you going to beat Sting, though? Like, I mean, I don't see Bret Hart beating Sting clean as a heel.
Not in the way the match was set up here. So he was going to have to cheat to win either way. They just maybe went really over the board. I don't know if we needed the whole ambulance thing, but I also don't remember what happens after. I don't know if the Sting comes back from this and they pay this off. So maybe they do. I don't remember.
Considering,
they might not.
Finish,
how shady is your Bret timeline in WCW?
Pretty shady.
Sure.
Yeah. Pretty shady. I don't like to think about it.
Now, is it pink shady or is it black shady?
Oh.
It's murky, I guess. I just don't
very, very murky.
Fair enough. I mean, this finish honestly wasn't as offensive to me as some of the other stuff that we've already talked about and some stuff we will talk about. Also because Sting's selling at the end was so great. Because when he hits that Stinger splash and he goes over the top and he overshoots the target and he hits the ring post, he's out. Yeah. Like, he does not move a muscle after that. Yeah. And he's pretty much a big old pinata for Bret Hart to come in, bash him with the baseball bat, and he locks in that sharpshooter, and Sting is just, like, he's unresponsive. It's like great selling. Great selling.
Yeah, for a 1998 Bret Hart versus Sting match, I had no problem with the match itself. I think it was just the way the match felt. And like, I wanted to feel happier about this, or this match to feel more special than it did. But in terms of like their work rate and how they worked in the ring, and and the finish that they used and all of that, I'm all fine with that. The ambulance stuff was a bit much, but I didn't really care about anything about that. It was more of the fact that 98 Bret Hart versus Sting was just a little depressing, and it was just,
I guess
the timing was off. Everything that was going on in WCW, they weren't a priority. And it just sucks. Is Bret Hart and Sting and Hogan and Warrior on the same card is like, holy crap.
Oh,
but I think the reason why I'm so salty about the finish is because when you watch a whole pay-per-view that's filled with run-ins and swerves, it just kind of like, it frustrates you after a while. If this was the only screwy finish of the night, then it would have been damn good. But after you had the bullshit with the tag team titles, the bullshit with Rick and Scott, the bullshit with Hall and Nash, what we're going to get later in the show, it's just like, it wears on you after a while. And when the WWE Network first came out, I wanted to experience everything. And I watched every single WCW pay-per-view. Once I got to 99 and especially 2000, it got exhausting after a while, watching the same finish, the same overbooked angles, the same run-ins, the same swerve after swerve after swerve. Like every single match had to have a swerve. It's just, it's exhausting. It's very exhausting to watch.
Yeah, especially once Vince Russo starts booking the shows. But I mean, Kevin Nash was doing the same things with the pen.
Yeah. But Greg, let me ask you: after WWE got in firm control of this war, how often were you keeping up with WCW? Because I know you were like a diehard WWF guy, but how many Nitros?
Well, Nitro used to run on a replay, so that was really helpful. I could watch it late at night. On TNT, so I'd kind of catch up with it there. I also called a lot of hotlines at the time and listened to the goings on. Was a subscriber to the Observer and things like that. And I would buy about 3 WCW pay-per-views a year, just randomly. And this was one of them. So I was eyeballing them all the way up until this point. I really started just losing focus on them around 99. So here my memories are kind of vague, but I still know in a general sense what they were doing. In terms of what was going on at this time, because I was a wrestling fan. And so a lot of times after Raw, I'd tape Raw every week, VCR right in the tape recorder, right in the machine. And then after, I would watch Nitro a lot late at night.
Because Greg, you talk a lot about, there's like little sprinklings of this old feeling of the wars today with like WWE and AEW. I feel like me and Zack experienced something very similar with WWE and TNA in the very early days between like 2006 and 2009, because I loved both promotions. I loved watching them all the time. I remember there were sometimes TNA had to run on Tuesdays, so they go head to head with ECW, and I was doing the channel flipping thing to see what they were both doing, and it was a really, really, really fun time. But then I feel like we both hit our limit in that 2010 period when you started doing podcasts. Once Hogan and Bischoff wrote in, they just became, let's get every single ex-WWE guy. I remember just turning the TV off. I remember I was in high school. It's like, you know what? If TNA Impact's going to run head-to-head with Monday Night Raw, I'm a high schooler. I don't have time to stay up and watch, 6 hours of wrestling every Monday. I got to pick a side, and I'm going to go with WWE. So we know that feeling. And, there is like the excitement, and we're glad that the excitement is back here. But, the excitement of when both companies are doing very well versus one company's doing well and the other one's just shitting the bed, that's when it starts getting depressing. Like at this point with WWE and WCW, it's just like, back maybe like a year prior, like WWE's doing really good. WCW is really, really trying to put, still make things work. But here it's just like WWE's here and WCW's down here. It's very depressing to watch.
Yeah. But Bret and Sting was a good match that should have been excellent. But thankfully, we have a palate cleanser after this. This is the palate cleanser of the decade right here.
Oh, you mean a palate cleanser that makes me go?
It's one of the Tomas, it's one of the greatest wrestling matches of all time. What do we got?
Where's the Tito's cameo right now? We need him to come and hack up a hairball.
I know, right? He's sleeping.
I mean, I would much rather be in Tito's situation and sleep during this match, but we got to talk about it, Tomas.
Hogan versus the Warrior. Now, let me reference something that happened earlier in the show. Hogan and Bischoff came out to cut a promo, and I so badly wanted to praise Hogan's promo because say what you want about Hogan, whether he's face or a heel, he knows how to get the fans by the balls. And he cut an excellent heel promo until he started just repeating and repeating and repeating NWO-ite. All the NWO-ites. Warrior's not an NWO-ite. If you're not an NWO-ite, it's like, you lost me, Hogan. You had me, and then you lost me. Because you had to say your damn catchphrase 17 times in one promo.
Yeah.
The fucking NWO-ites.
Keeping in mind that Hulk Hogan was the heel, right?
Yeah.
He was the heel. He's referring to all of his NWO-ites out in the crowd, you know? This whole situation with Warrior coming into the fold just to give Hogan his win back from WrestleMania 6. Like, Tony Schiavone and Mike Tenay.
How petty do you have to be?
They're sitting there calling this the rematch of the decade. That's so far-fetched. That is so far-fetched.
I'm staying with my
At least they kept
tagline.
it confined to a decade. At least they weren't saying century. I mean, at least decade. I mean, at that time, it was the rematch of a decade. Like before the match happened, Hogan and Warrior probably would have been the rematch of the decade. But then after the match happened, it was like, well, that's the worst thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was basically...
it was a letdown of the decade is what it was.
It was the rematch nobody asked for.
Yeah. Nobody was really needing that one.
Nope.
So, Greg, I know you probably weren't watching a bunch of Nitro just like, you know, live at the ready, but Warrior comes out before Fall Brawl, I want to say, is when he makes his big debut, and Hogan's standing there and he's got his lip quivering. It's a great entrance. Yeah. And then Warrior just gets in the ring and he just talks.
Babbles,
and he talks some more. Destrucity is probably mentioned somewhere in that promo, but my God, like Warrior just like with his this long-winded promo just ruined the whole mystique of his character, I feel like.
Yeah. There's a lot of guys, too, when they take long times off, and especially in these days, the business was changing so crazy. It was not the same place as it was in 1991 or 1990 when Warrior would cut these type of promos, and none of that stuff was really going to hit now. And, you know, he comes in there and doesn't kind of read the room, so to speak, and doesn't do some research, watch a little Raw, watch some Nitro, see what the attitude is like, see the promo style these guys are using. It's not this. Nobody's doing what you're doing anymore. And so he come out there and with all this shit, I'm like, nobody's listening to this. They want to see tits and ass and hear Austin say curse words and just explode with excitement. That's what wrestling is all about now. So once he comes in and starts all that, you know, it was just like, well, he's, you know, Hogan Hogan would have long-winded promos too, but at least he was a heel now and doing something different and being hated to, you know, and using this this era that we're in to give him an equally big heel run. Hogan was smarter than Warrior business wise and what to do there and stuff. So that just wasn't gonna fly. I mean, there's gonna be some fans that were gonna still like it and be into seeing Warrior, but that promo would just put everybody to sleep because you don't know what he said.
As a follow-up question, then, do you think Warrior would have gone through with the plan and signed with WCW if he knew that the plan was to put Hogan over? Like,
I don't know. Maybe I don't know how it worked at that time. I think he should have understood that he's probably going to have to face Hogan, and him beating him again is going to be probably unlikely. I would hope that he would at least know that much going in. But you know, then again, when you're probably paid what Bischoff was paying him. You know,
but you know, you look at WCW side of things, you got to realize like they know very well that Warrior is still very unhinged considering his exit from the WWE just a couple years prior. And they should have realized, like, is it really that good of an idea to bring this man in? Apparently they thought so because they thought he was a draw and they thought this Hogan and Warrior match was going to be a draw. Is there absolutely anything they could have done to make this match decent?
No.
Yeah, probably not. Even if they would have hit the fireball properly, I don't think it would have saved it. So
these guys wrestle for 14 minutes. And this is how the match starts off. Hogan and Warrior stare each other down. They jaw jack a little. And this match is 14 minutes. 7 minutes of this match was the fucking test of strength. Warrior and Hogan go for the test of strength. and Hogan overpowers him, and then Warrior starts up, and then Hogan pushes him back down, and Warrior's down there doing his thing, and then he powers back up, and then Hogan brings him back down, and it's like, guys, this is the first hold of the match. Do you really need to catch your breath that much?
Yeah, the first 15 minutes of the WrestleMania 6 match was like that. But back then, people actually was into that because it was the true clash of these titans, and 60,000 people were, because these guys, neither one of them can work a lick. So doing those tests of strength and stuff is all you really had. But trying to do this now, 8 years later,
exactly.
In modern times, in the same building or the same show that cruiserweights are flipping all over the place, wasting the fans' time with that. There's just nothing exciting about this. Just the visual of it was slightly cool, but the rest of it, it was a terrible story. It was a terrible match, terrible execution. Everything
terrible
they did was
story.
bad. Yeah.
Terrible story. The Warrior coming out there talking about his one Warrior Nation, which is OWN and WO backwards. He's appearing in the mirror in Hogan's visions, the build to this, and only Hogan can see the Warrior. Bischoff comes into the locker room and he thinks Hogan is nuts when the audience can see the Warrior. Hogan can see the Warrior. Bischoff looks like a complete doof because he can't see the Warrior.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, Bray Wyatt probably took a couple of the footnotes from this because he was doing this in his feud with John Cena in 2014.
No.
WCW needs to do themselves a favor and let WWE do the supernatural stuff, because when they had the Dungeon of Doom and all that stuff was so bad. And this, and anytime they ever tried to do something like this, it made the show like Power Rangers look like the greatest special effect you've ever seen.
Right.
Hold on. It was just so low rent looking.
The Dungeon of Doom. Remember, there are no Hulkamaniacs there.
Yeah.
It's so hot.
It's not hot.
I remember they asked Bryan Danielson about that. He said when he was a kid and he saw that, he wanted to gouge his eyes out.
Yeah, I know.
Hey, I'm going to respectfully disagree with Mr. Danielson. The Dungeon of Doom is a guilty pleasure for me, man. I love that stuff. The Zodiac.
Oh, my God. Anywho, Greg, what were your feelings while you were watching this match, if you can recall?
I definitely was acknowledging that it sucked, and I knew how bad it was. And I think that's part of the reason why I bought this show, is because I watched WrestleMania 6 with my family on the living room floor. And so I was like, I probably actually did buy the pay-per-view for this match. Not because I thought it was going to be good. I just wanted to see it. I just wanted to see what happened.
Morbid curiosity.
And I didn't think it was I didn't think it was going to be great, but I was definitely surprised that it was as god awful as it was. Nothing in these guys, they didn't look like they were cooperating with each other much. Nothing was flowing right. It was clunky, felt disorganized. They set up the Horace Hogan stuff in the interview to show that he turned on him, only for Horace to come out and turn on the Warrior.
Let's talk about that.
Help
this
Hogan win,
rematch,
Fireball, all that.
Yeah, the rematch of the decade. And they are talking about Hulk turning on Horace in the build-up to this.
Yeah.
What else? What else do you want to talk about?
They were going to swerve us or whatever. So I guess Horace was going to come out and surprise us. Because you knew it wasn't going to be a clean win. Warrior might not want to be agreeing to that. So Hogan, if he's going to get his win back, you're going to have to do it like a heel.
What does Warrior need a disciple for the one Warrior Nation?
Yeah,
like the clue is in the name. The clue is in the name. You only need one Warrior.
Yeah,
gold chain, knee brace over the shorts. Name another guy doing it like Horace.
Yeah.
Stone Cold Steve Austin.
What?
Yeah. Damn.
Who's Horace Hogan?
The fact that he was a big factor here, I guess they thought this would be super shocking, but WCW was doing a lot of this. They were doing this with Buff. This thing where they make it, they were just doing the same type of stuff. So this wasn't like a super shock. I can't believe Horace hit Warrior. I'm like, I can. I was like,
Horace and Warrior have some past that we're supposed to acknowledge, that we're supposed to know about.
And WCW wasn't good about recapping things anyway. So the fact that they went out of their way to recap what Hogan did to Horace, you knew Horace was going to be making an appearance there. So that almost gave that away.
Yeah.
And then who interferes in this match? Vincent interferes.
The Giant.
The Giant interferes, and Warrior, it takes one punch. One punch to take those guys out. They go back to this shitty match they're having. Nothing happens, and then the spot that we're all thinking about. It's the first thing that comes to mind when I think about this match.
Stevie Ray interfered too. Stevie Ray.
Yeah.
Stevie Ray, yeah.
Hulk pulls out a little bag, and he pulls out a lighter. And we all know what he's going to do with that. He tries to throw a fireball in Warrior's face, and he misses. Straight up misses.
Doesn't even
Very
fit.
bad.
The fireball
It's hard to
goes
execute
off.
those. It's hard to do those anyway, you know.
Mhm.
So the fact that they even tried this was ridiculous.
Yeah. And you know what's even more fascinating about this, Greg? All the Horace Hogan business happened after the failed fireball. So it makes me wonder if the fireball was the planned finish and Horace doing the heel turn on this pay-per-view was improvised. Like,
I feel like somebody, if the fireball was the finish and they improvised it, I feel like it would have been somebody else other than Horace. I don't know if they would have made a whole heel turn on that audible. They might have just sent another heel out there to hit Warrior with a chair.
Maybe.
So maybe Horace turning was the plan, but the fireball could have definitely been the botch and might have been supposed to have been the botch. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Or might have supposed to have been the finish. The fireball
was supposed to be a
finish.
botch the whole time.
Yeah.
We're just sitting here talking about the biggest blunder in probably WCW history in the ring wise. And it was all the work, brother. It was all the work.
Oh.
I meant to fail on that fireball.
Yeah.
Do not ask Hulk about this today, because he will come up with some outlandish lie saying that it was supposed to be him and Bret in the main event of WrestleMania the following year, that Vince was wanting to re-sign Hogan and Metallica was going to be in his corner and all this bullshit.
Metallica?
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't know Hulk Hogan was apparently a member of Metallica?
Oh, God.
Yeah. Oh, Hogan's done a lot. You'd be surprised.
Yeah. He was supposed to wrestle
that
Shane
fireball that he tried to throw at Warrior was an actual piece of the sun.
Yeah.
That was given to him. And he
by
saved
Zeus.
it. Yeah.
By his buddy Zeus.
By Zeus during the filming of No Holds Barred as a
Yeah.
present for the wrapping of the movie. Zeus gave him a piece of the sun, and he kept it and tried to throw it in the Warrior's face. But due to the lower elevation or the lower atmosphere in Vegas, it didn't explode.
They're supposed to make
it's science. You know, it's science.
Yeah. And Zeus whispered in Hulk's ear, "You'll know when to use this."
They were supposed to make a spin-off about Thunder Lips, brother.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
This is
Sylvester Stallone was supposed to direct me.
Okay, fine, Greg. Which match is worse? This match or the match the year prior with Hogan and Piper in the cage?
Oh yeah. I think this match was worse.
Yeah.
That one was bad too. They're horrible. They're horrible.
I mean, I can't really give it anything else other than -5 stars. Like, there's nothing else I can really say about it, but
horrible. You know what? I think our equivalent, Zach, me and you, our equivalent of this match would be Goldberg and Lesnar at WrestleMania 20.
Yeah. But I mean, even then, like, I feel like growing up and like just hearing what all the other fans were saying around us about Goldberg and Lesnar, people were hyped for that. They were
it was just more of that was just the anger coming out and the fact that it was just kind of a disappointment and everything surrounding it. You know, plus that translated in the ring to where the match just didn't feel that exciting, but they weren't screwing everything up the way Warrior and Hogan were.
God, yeah, this one didn't have the hype of a Goldberg Lesnar because people were probably expecting it was going to be at best overrated. I don't know if you think their Mania 6 match is any good, Greg, but
I do think it's good. I think for what they can do, I think that match was put together about as well as it could.
It's about
they don't
the
do
moment and the environment.
Spectacular. It's just, what'd you say?
Yeah. Same with Hogan Andre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They did the best with what they had, and both matches. I mean, well, Hogan and Andre was still a pretty bad match, but it was the spectacle of it was just everybody was on the edge of their seat. Hogan and Warrior, I think, was better than Hogan and Andre, like in the ring.
They just clicked that night.
But the way the fans were reacting to literally every clothesline, every punch, every knockdown, everything in the Hogan and Warrior WrestleMania match, where they were thumbs up their asses.
Hogan Warrior WrestleMania 6 inspired Edge to want to become a pro wrestler. You think there was anyone in the crowd for this match this night that said, you know what, I wanted to be a wrestler, but no, I changed my mind.
Probably. We probably never got the next Edge because the poor schmuck was in the front row for this. And we're like, I'm going to cancel that check to wrestling school.
What are you talking about?
Wrestling after this night.
What are you talking about? The next Edge is Adam Copeland. I don't know what you're saying.
But you know what? This was a terrible match, and this has been a very lackluster match. But we ended off on a pretty good main event.
Yeah.
It's Goldberg defending the WCW Heavyweight Championship against one Diamond Dallas Page. Goldberg was still on his massive winning streak at the time. Goldberg had won the title from Hogan on that episode of Nitro that just, it's one of the most infamous episodes of Nitro. Goldberg basically unifying the heavyweight title and the United States title, but then we'll go on to relinquish the United States title so we could continue this run as the world champion. Diamond Dallas Page is, the Cinderella story. He started pro wrestling when he was, 34 years old, and he just had the knack for this. And he became so beloved. He became the only babyface to never join the NWO. Yeah. And, there's that iconic episode of Nitro not Nitro, it's Sold Out, where they give DDP the shirt and DDP takes it, but then he gives, did he give Hogan the diamond cutter? He gives someone the diamond cutter, then he escapes into the crowd. Yeah, he gives Hall the diamond cutter. He escapes in the crowd. The fans are all over him. DDP was just, I don't think WCW did not deserve DDP and the contributions he gave to the business at such a late age in his life too.
And he was jacked coming out to the ring. Yeah. Michael Buffer is in the ring doing his trademarked catchphrases in there to get the crowd all hyped up. DDP, he goes from one side of the stage and then to the other, and he's all like he's so excited to have this main event, which he won at the Fall Brawl pay-per-view the month before in that god-awful War Games match, huh, Greg?
Yeah, that's right. Yes, that's how he got the shot here. This is actually a good match. I thought it was really good.
Yeah.
Goldberg's best title defense.
Yeah, it's sad because everybody not named Greg Morgan apparently did not see the live feed of this match when it originally aired live. Bless you. But this was, in my opinion, my favorite match of the show. Thankfully, they saved the best for last. DDP and Goldberg go in there and have a very competitive match. And they actually do mention on commentary, Tomas, that DDP had a hand in training Goldberg at the power plant. So there's a bit of not personal animosity in this match, but there's it's a babyface versus babyface contest. So you can tell that there's going to be some respectful competitiveness out of both of them. And they showed that. They showed that here. It wasn't like neither guy went out there and they weren't really malicious towards each other. I mean, the world title was on the line, but Tony Schiavone even said to the viewers, he was like, my God, what a breath of fresh air to see two guys go out there and try and win and not cheat.
It's like, wow, let's put a wrestling match on this wrestling show.
Yeah.
And it might be good. Might be good.
With no BS at all. I don't know, man. But Goldberg, there's a point where he spears the ring post and he starts selling the arm. Goldberg does not get enough credit for how good he is at selling. I don't care what people say. I think Goldberg's a great seller. He was holding on to that arm and he was working it the whole match. He does hit DDP with a spear, but he can't capitalize and he can't cover DDP because he hit him with the injured shoulder. Goes for the jackhammer, can't lift DDP up, and he hits him with the diamond cutter. And the crowd is going bananas here because the commentators are going bananas because even though the number of Goldberg streak at this time is completely bonkers and total BS as well, but the announcers were putting over the fact that this could be the time when Goldberg is dethroned. And
that should have been that diamond cutter should have been the end of the streak.
Yeah,
I think. I only say that I didn't mind that he won at the time, but the fact that he just lost to Nash 2 months later, I'm like, well, if you're going to end the streak that quick anyway, might as well just done it here and really made
the cattle prod.
And then you can have WWE with Austin and Rock, and now WCW's got Goldberg and DDP. And you can make them their Austin Brock counterpart in WCW. They had the opportunity sitting right there. Nope, too much.
Well, and DDP was dubbed the People's Champion going into this too.
Yeah.
He was working the People's Champion gimmick, and I'm like, wow.
Yeah, that was their chance, I think, right here. I would have put this off. I would have put DDP and Goldberg at Starrcade, is what I would have done, and had it done there, because maybe October was a bit early to drop the title. So I would have just pushed the match to Starrcade and done it there. But I feel like DDP should have been the one, not Nash.
No, absolutely not. And rewatching all these pay-per-views, and when I got to Starrcade 98 and seeing how that match ended, I even too, like, it's been 20-something years, but I'm just like, why there? Of all places, why there? And in that fashion, with the fucking cattle prod, you end this magnificent streak.
And this match here, I remember having the conscious thought watching the match, because at this time I was kind of a smarky type of fan, and I was seeing right through Goldberg. I was not a believer at all. I was not a believer at all. He's 155-0. He's winning 3 matches a week. Is that what you're telling me? I mean, that's what they were basically trying to say here, because he just debuted a year prior. So I kind of was like, okay, they're totally manufacturing this guy, but I knew he was over, but I wasn't believing him in the ring. To me, he was not Bret's level or Austin's level or Shawn's or anybody else really good in the business. And this match made me say, okay, like he actually, when he's in there with somebody and he has to have a long match, because he looks great when he does the spear and the jackhammer and his matches 9 seconds. He's awesome. But put him in there 10 plus minutes is usually when you kind of start seeing how bad he sucks. And he didn't. He was good in this whole match. He held his own with DDP, and the match was my favorite of his entire run.
Best match of Goldberg's career up to this point, for sure. I know he would have a couple of matches going into the dying days of WCW. There is a super underrated match that he had with Scott Steiner at a Fall Brawl that was awesome. That was a great Hoss fight. But I mean, this is certainly up there. Easily top 3 Goldberg match.
He also never, ever turned Goldberg heel. That was another thing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
he did it too. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Goldberg should never be heel.
Bro,
a couple of months after this, he'd hurt his hand too, right? He'd bust through the thing, and
Bret Hart.
That's when they got really.
Yeah.
Real glass, cry me a river.
Yeah. Or no, it was a year later. I'm sorry, it was a year after this, I think. Yeah.
He would
definitely real glass. Yeah.
Yeah, real glass, cry me a river.
He would
if Jack Perry is that masked dude, I'm gonna die.
Oh God! Could you imagine?
I think he might be.
You think so?
I'm gonna die too if it's Jack Perry.
I would not recommend that if I was AEW. I think that's gonna piss a lot of people off. But I would kind of like it. I think it would be, for me, I'd laugh.
I would laugh too. I would fucking love it if Jack Perry ends up being the devil. Well, anywho.
Well, come on. Hold on. Jack Perry takes off the mask and he goes, I'm here. Yeah.
Oh, fucking hell. That's what Jack Perry said to me at WrestleCon. I went by him. Okay, so let me. Okay. You know what? Fuck it. Bonus story time since we're done with this review. Because I never actually told Greg this story. I was standing there at WrestleCon waiting for Anna Jay to get back to her seat because I wanted to take a picture with her. And I'm kind of just standing there minding my own business. And I look up and it's Jack Perry. And I kind of get taken aback and I go, "Hey, Jungle Boy, how's it going?" And he just looks at me and goes, "Oh, I'm here." Yeah. And he goes back to his chair and he sits there with like the grumpiest look on his face. And I'm like, well, you're not getting my $50 now.
Yeah, no, right. He definitely did seem grumpy. He was grumpy on the Jericho cruise too when I met him there. He was just wasn't thrilled to be there or something, but whatever. Jungle Boy would be the perfect devil.
Right. Anywho, this was a terrible show. But it was a fun time talking about it with you guys. I'm going to give it a Bret Hart special. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. Very good main event, some enjoyable cruiserweight action. Everything else was either forgettable, frustrating, or the worst match of all time with Hogan and Warrior.
Yeah. 4 out of 10 for me, I would say. The Bret Hart special for sure. One of Goldberg's best matches in WCW and a solid enough Bret Sting match that could have been better. Good opener between Jericho and Raven and some Disco Inferno working double duty in both solid matches. But when you have to have Disco Inferno pulling double duty of all people, not good.
Him and Rick Steiner were your workhorses. Any final thoughts?
When you're a shitty student and you fail a class, but since you're well behaved, the teacher gives you an extra couple points and passes you. That's what I'll do for this pay-per-view. It's an F for me, but I'm going to give it. I'm going to pass it on a D on the strength of Goldberg and DDP. And the visual of of Bret Hart and Sting, and Disco Inferno showing up to work.
Yeah, for once in his career.
Showing up to work, and good mic work showing up on this stream once again. It's always a pleasure having you, my friend. Let the viewers know where they can find you also.
Yeah, good mic work commentaries right here on you. Are we on YouTube? Yeah, we're on YouTube.
Yeah.
Right over here on YouTube. You can find my channel there. Just search it. You'll see me. Would love a subscription from you guys. And then over on social media at Good Mic Work on Twitter, at Good Mic Work 1 on Instagram, or just Google search Good Mic Work. You will find me. I'm around.
He'll be the bald one.
I'll be the bald one. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. I've left a link to his channel down in the description box.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Subscribe.
I'm looking very forward to hearing your Monday Night Raw review tonight. I'm actually need to finish up listening to your last podcast and catch up my other stuff. And you know where to find me and Zack. You know, we're always here talking wrestling. Our next show is going to be ECW One Night Stand. No, Crown Jewel. WWE Crown Jewel is on Saturday. So we are going to review Crown Jewel and then ECW One Night Stand 2005 and then Vengeance 2005. So catch us there. We're always talking wrestling. Great to have you, Greg. Thank you once again for joining us.
Absolutely, guys. Thank you. I'm late. I got to get working on my Raw review, so I'm going to peace out of here.
Yeah,
but
for sure, man. Take it easy, bro.
We'll catch you guys soon.
Absolutely.